My father missed my graduation and dismissed it as a pointless event for failures. He announced it loudly enough that the whole kitchen fell silent. My mother paused while washing the dishes and fixed her gaze on the sink, as if the plates had suddenly become incredibly interesting. "A mere certificate doesn't create a real man," he grumbled while fastening his costly jacket. "True winners create companies. Failures gather diplomas." I can still recall the scent of scorched tea leaves on the burner, the ceiling fan whirring steadily above us. My graduation robe dangled by the entrance, belonging to someone else's accomplishment. My younger brother chuckled quietly. My aunt grinned while checking her phone. Then my father turned straight toward me and spoke the words that remained in my veins for years afterward. "If you go up on that platform tomorrow, don't look for me there." The following day, every chair in the family area stayed vacant as other graduates greeted their enthusiastic parents. I crossed the stage by myself under the glaring auditorium lights that felt icier than freezing drizzle. The clapping sounded odd when it wasn't truly directed at you. I could hear the cameras snapping photos, parents shedding tears, bouquets crinkling in their wrappers, but no one shouted my name except the person reading the list. Once the event ended, I waited outside clutching my diploma while families hugged each other. Scenes unfolded around me like clips from films I had never been part of. My phone vibrated just once. A text from my father: "Grab milk while you're coming back." That was the instant something deep within me fell quiet, not shattered, not furious, simply quiet. And quiet, I eventually discovered, is where the most potent form of payback starts. I had always been the unnoticed child in a household that valued noisy individuals. My father revered self-assurance the same way certain men follow faith. He respected firm handshakes, high-end timepieces, strong tones, and individuals who cut others off during meals. My younger brother Hamza received all of that effortlessly. He could flunk multiple subjects and still get labeled as full of potential simply because his grin suggested achievement already owned him. I tended to be more reserved, thoughtful, the type who paid attention longer than he talked. In our home, that was interpreted as frailty. My father presented Hamza as my upcoming example. He mentioned me by my field of study, often followed by a letdown gesture. Computer-related things, he'd remark, nothing useful so far. He never realized how closely I observed details. The past due notices tucked under papers, the creditor calls that caused my mother's expression to stiffen. The manner in which my father continued acquiring symbols of prestige, even as the power supply failed several times weekly. I figured out soon that boisterous men frequently confuse volume with strength, so while Hamza pursued notice, I pursued abilities. I devoted evenings to learning coding on borrowed computers with damaged frames. I took on freelance jobs, secretly using made-up profiles. Since my father ridiculed working from home as trivial online earnings, at times I made more money in 7 days than he earned in 30, yet I stayed silent. Individuals show their true nature more openly when they assume you're inferior, and my relatives fully accepted that view. The put-downs in my household were never bold enough to challenge openly. And that was the smart aspect. They came wrapped as humor, mild remarks inserted amid eating, gentle enough to retract if you objected. During supper, my father would inquire about Hamza's social circle, his fitness routine, his ambitions. Then his glance would shift to me as though recalling an incomplete task. "You're still stuck in that room every day." The table often grew hushed afterward, not an awkward hush, a routine hush, the sort families get used to over time. My mother would drop her eyes to her food. Hamza would smile into his drink, and my father would keep dining, pleased he had reinforced everyone's understanding of my place. One night, family members stopped by for tea. My aunt inquired about my job. Before I replied, my father laughed lightly. "He tinkers with computers. We're still hoping for that rich phase." The group chuckled courteously. I joined in laughing. That irritated him even more. I picked up on minor details throughout those years. How my father only spoke softly to those wealthier than himself. How he would cut me off halfway through a thought, yet paid close attention when outsiders voiced the identical notion more forcefully. Occasionally, he'd pause outside my room door as I continued working deep into the hours, the glow from my screen casting blue patterns down the passage. "You're throwing away your youth." He commented once before leaving. I recall gazing at the shut door later, listening to his steps recede along the hallway, and considering, perhaps. Or perhaps I was constructing something they couldn't identify yet. The key moment arrived on an ordinary Tuesday evening, so routine it nearly slipped my mind. Rain lightly struck my flat's windows as I reviewed agreements from 3 separate clients across 3 separate nations. Code lines mirrored on the darkened display like shifting star patterns. My drink had cooled long before. Then my mobile rang. It was my mother. I nearly let it go. Her tone sounded tense, deliberately steady. "The bank visited today," she said softly. Your father hid how serious the situation had become. I leaned back gradually, looking upward at the ceiling. All at once, every fragment I'd silently gathered over time clicked together. The lavish meals, the rented vehicle, the pretended boldness, the sealed letters stashed in cabinets. My father wasn't dominant. He was struggling in a showy manner, that very evening. Hamza shared images from a fancy lounge in the city center. Fancy top partly open, messages about triumphing at existence. At the same time, my mother was figuring out which payments could last another cycle. Something within me became steady then, not fury, understanding. I accessed my professional overview and examined the figures I'd kept concealed from them all for years. Agreements, funds, reserves, unseen achievements gathered during countless unnoticed evenings. For a long time, I had hoped respect would come on its own. But certain individuals only acknowledge worth once they no longer have it available. And for the initial time ever, I quit seeking my father's validation. I began imagining his expression once he understood he required mine instead. I didn't act right away. That's what separates payback from haste. Haste is driven by feelings. Noisy, messy, I favored steadiness. During the following weeks, I paid even closer attention than before. My father talked nonstop once you quit attempting to break in. I discovered his building firm was failing due to unsettled debts and postponed vendor bills. 2 backers were warning of court steps. The bank had started locking funds linked to specific ventures. Yet each night, he occupied the main spot at the dining table acting as if everything was under control. I never revealed what I knew. I simply got ready. By that stage, I had devoted close to 6 years developing protection systems for global organizations, through my own discreet consulting firm, set up under my personal identity. Most customers had never encountered me in person. They only knew my deliveries came promptly, fixed issues and generated profits. Unspoken ability grows quicker than arrogance. I reached out to my financial advisor initially, followed by my legal expert. Each movement, placement, and acquisition underwent thorough checks. Spotless documentation, distinct responsibilities. No choices based on sentiment. I shifted my mother's healthcare costs to a confidential fund she could use independently without seeking permission from my father. I cleared part of her obligations through proper anonymous routes, so nobody could connect it back straight away. Then I held off. Individuals like my father don't fail suddenly. They break down openly in stages. And in time, precisely as anticipated, the calls increased in frequency. His tone gentler with each conversation. The important call arrived shortly after midnight. My father rarely phoned that late unless matters had crumbled. I picked up without saying anything. For several moments, only breathing came through, deep, irregular. In the background, a TV played faintly in a vacant space. Then his voice emerged, weaker than I'd ever known it. "We must discuss. Not a greeting, not an apology, simply must." The next day, I drove to my parents' residence for the first time in months. The entrance path held only my father's vehicle, the luxurious model. He used to shine it every Sunday morning. Dust now covered its surface. Indoors, the home seemed oddly delicate, blinds closed, Illumination lowered. My mother appeared exhausted beyond what rest could mend, and my father. He avoided eye contact initially. The bank had locked yet another fund. Backers were withdrawing. A single legal case might end everything. Then arrived the statement he found hardest to utter. "I heard your venture is succeeding." There it stood, not admiration, acknowledgement, postponed by many years. Hamza remained wordless in the corner, browsing his inactive device because his connection had been disconnected that morning. I listened steadily as my father outlined figures, obligations, schedules. The identical person who had once ridiculed online side earnings now addressed me like a financial expert, across a discussion setting. When he at last requested assistance, the space turned utterly calm, and for the first occasion in my existence, I permitted the quiet to respond first. News traveled among relatives quicker than anticipated, not concerning the liabilities, concerning me. Family members who previously overlooked my special days suddenly discovered excuses to reach out. My aunt, the very one who had chuckled at my supposed wealthy period, now spoke with measured courtesy, inquiring about my activities as though addressing someone significant. Even Hamza quit his teasing once he grasped I could discreetly resolve matters beyond his comprehension. Yet the most unusual response came from my father. He turned more reserved, not gentler. Not renewed, merely conscious. Conscious that the child he had overlooked for so long had turned into the sole reliable element remaining for the family. I consented to assist with firm requirements. Properties needed disposal. Records made open. No further pretend prestige buys. No additional money choices concealed by ego. For the first time, my father heeded me without cutting in. And strangely, that seemed more poignant than rewarding. Because payback appears mighty in your mind. You envision victory, justification, some theatrical instant when past hurts finally vanish. But actual payback feels chillier. It's observing others suddenly prize traits they once belittled you for possessing. Steadiness, self-control, quietness. The qualities that appeared feeble in their view became precisely what rescued them. And that awareness altered something essential within me. I ceased judging my value by those who failed to see it sooner. I still reflect on graduation day at times, not with resentment now, just understanding. I recall standing solo under those hall lights thinking isolation equaled defeat. In those days, I believed achievement would arrive noisily when it came. I pictured intense regrets, heated exchanges. Some movie-like conclusion where everybody abruptly grasped my hurt. But existence seldom wraps up so cleanly. My father never offered a complete apology for skipping my ceremony. Not openly. Men of his type often mix quiet with pride. Instead, his regret showed in subtler forms, in the brief pauses before addressing me, in the thoughtful notice he now offered my thoughts, in the uneasy esteem that took the place of years of disregard. Surprisingly, that proved sufficient, not because he deserved pardon, because I no longer required payback for recovery. These days, I operate from a peaceful workspace with a view of the urban horizon. My mother comes by regularly now that bill worries no longer trouble her. Hamza and I converse now and then. Carefully, like two adults discovering one another beyond former family positions. And my father, at moments he observes me the way I once observed him. Attempting to figure out how the person he undervalued turned into someone he relies upon. The interesting part is, I didn't pursue success to disprove him. I pursued success because that vacant spot at my ceremony delivered the greatest teaching of my lifetime. Never construct your path depending on individuals who require you to remain limited so they can appear grand.